morning. We are back again this Saturday morning talking financial literacy. My name is Lorato Khomolemo and welcome to yet another show that we are doing for our communities to educate, empower, and grow the Free State community. Now, last week, we spoke at length about the topic of saving. And when we had this discussion, the normalities of saving, the challenges of saving, why South Africans do not save, the numbers of people who are saving, and those that are not able to save, and the societal challenges that we have as a community in the Free State. The MEC then said, let's extend this conversation further. We cannot just end it at where we were. We should continue speaking about savings and the small things, MEC, the nitty-gritties, the important things that we do not talk about as a community, that challenge us, that we have not yet addressed. I'm joined this morning again by MEC. She continues to be with us every Saturday morning. I am pleased. MEC, good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm well. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's a cold week this week,
yes.
but we're fine.
Yes,
we're fine, and we continue speaking financial literacy.
Absolutely.
Because we want to empower our communities.
Absolutely.
I am also joined by
Moelet Sintima from Standard Bank.
Moelet Sintima from Standard Bank. All our stakeholders, MEC, are here today. It's a very wonderful environment to have everyone here. Shemaine?
Good morning. Hi, Lorato. I'm Shemaine Mula, and I'm proudly from Nedbank, and thank you for having us.
It's our absolute pleasure. MEC, everyone knows you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Khadija Brown, MEC Finance for the Free State Province.
Ipatlele?
Good morning, and good morning to you, MEC. My name is Ipatlele Mchiani. I'm from the Red Bank, ABSA.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. Now, MEC, last week when we ended the show, we were speaking about savings, and you wanted us to continue the conversation.
Right.
And include the legalities
Right.
of the things that our communities do not know. And I want to start this conversation with Mo on the other side and speak about some of the documentation that we were speaking about. Mo, are you well?
I'm good. Thank
You're
you.
good?
I'm awesome.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Now let's speak about the various documents that are needed in a situation where the parent is not available. And there are savings that need to be accessed. Let's speak to our people about that.
All right. Thank you, and greetings to everyone. Lorato, I think we would just have to differentiate an instance where somebody might not be present right now, and somebody that might have passed on.
Yes.
There's a difference.
Okay.
If I am still alive and for whatever reason I am not able to access my account as a parent, and I need to disperse the funds to perhaps one of my kids. Unfortunately, according to the rules, the banking rules, it's not easy. It's not easy for somebody just to show up and say, I'm so-and-so, Mo, send me, I need money.
Right.
However, in the case where a parent or both parents are deceased, and then we need somebody to step in to be in charge of these funds. So the proper way of doing it is to approach the Master of the High Court.
Okay.
Therein, they will be issuing, after satisfying themselves, of course, that the person standing in front of them is the relevant guardian. They will issue what we call the letter of authority.
Cool.
All right. So it gives this particular individual the right to administer these funds. So that is the most important document that one needs to obtain.
And how long does that take?
It depends.
Okay.
I have to be honest. It depends. It can take anything from 2 weeks to up to 3 months. It just depends on the complexity of one's estate.
Okay.
All right. Second thing that is also important, obviously, now I'm talking when you have to approach the bank.
Yes.
If you have this letter of authority, you are good. Now you would also need to produce the deceased death certificate. Obviously, we need to confirm this particular individual has actually passed on. And we also need the copy of the ID just to satisfy ourselves that, yeah, this is for the right person. And obviously now we're looking at the executor. Who's this person that is approaching us? We have also the banking rules where we'll need their proof of identity and their proof of residence just to say we're speaking to the right person. All right. However, I want to extend it just for a little bit. That is the easiest way
Right.
of doing it.
Okay.
However, as a parent, one of the ways, there's also two ways in which you can also ensure, that the funds will be secured. God forbid something happens to you. So you can establish what you call a living inter vivos. It's a trust. So
Okay.
it's a trust that you establish while you are still alive. So basically, you can start any business and you start to put funds there. Majority of the people, what they do, they buy property, and that is property is mainly used, to take care of their kids.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
And the second one, we call it testamentary trust. So you say, normally it's been led by your will. So this is an instance where you say, in a case where I passed on, all my estates needs to be pulled and put into one basket, and then a trust will then be established. So that is two of the easiest way in which you can definitely secure the funds for your kids.
Okay. MEC, I want to bring you in here. The last time when we spoke, I'd bring you in to be mother hen, and we try and simplify this banking language for our communities. I'd like you to come in because you've always had a concern about child-headed households. And I want you've got your stakeholders that are banks, especially within the Free State community. What are some of the considerations that you'd like banks to make, especially towards child-headed households?
Yeah. So to bring this to more practical sense, and I'm going to use an example. A family is traveling between Botshabelo and Otabanchu and Bloemfontein. In an accident, mom and dad passes on. You've got a 15-year-old girl and then another little sibling or another brother or sister. There's an aunt, there might be a gogo. The funeral has to happen in a week. How do you access that savings outside of having that letter of authority and then going through a legal process? It takes 2 to 3 weeks, right? So you're saying there are options. We have a will, and in the will there's a placement of a clause called a testament trust, and that then allows for a parent, guardian, nominated individual or beneficiary to be able to have access to the accounts. I'm sure that it has been largely frustrating where families are in shock and do not necessarily how to manage this process of accessing funds, and they've got to make sure that the household is running. So that is where I want us to just go one step back. How do we make it easier for our communities who don't understand really what a will is meant to do, and how do we get to our communities in time to establish those wills? How do we make it affordable for somebody who just has a grant, as an example, but because of pensions, the family member would have worked at the municipality and they've got pension funds and other mechanisms, and that grandmother has to have a will, the parents have to have a will, and so on and so forth. How do we find ways to make it simpler and easier for our young people to understand that this is what needs to happen? And this is just, ladies and gentlemen, this is just the savings component that we have moved along from a previous segment. But this talks to everything that's related to financial, your homes, your income, your investments, your assets. If you're looking at everything considering, we will still go into that, but this is just one component of it. So I just want us to just maybe simplify it a little bit for us and explain to us how best we can get young people, guardians, gogos, those who have to go and stand at a grant level and be able to understand, how do I manage should an event of this tragedy happen? What is the next steps for me?
Yeah. If I have to be honest, I understand the pain that people will be going through, and also the level of knowledge that people might not necessarily have as to their bank processes. I have to say each case in those instances will be treated according to its own merits. We'll have to look at the severity of it. Who's the person that's standing in front of you? We hardly, as a bank, look at things like affidavit to say, I, as Moeleti, I am, the surviving spouse or maybe the parent of this person that deceased, and we need to access this money so that we can, have a proper burial and everything else that follows. So it just depends again on the individual that's coming and what type of documentation that we have. Unfortunately, like I'm saying, it's not a blanket approach. We can say everybody just comes to it, because ultimately there's rules that we also have to abide by. So I'm just saying every case will have to be treated according to its own merits and demerits.
Okay. Let me see.
If I may,
Yes.
So what all I'm requesting is some sort of standard advice that you would give our viewers today. Just a standard advice, even though you'll be doing an assessment individual by individual. What is the standard advice? All right, you go out and you do a will, you have a financial conversation with your family, whatever it may be. I'd like to know just the standard advice to be prepared, and then as this program goes along, we can submit the relevant information, a document, a copy of a will. We're going to add it to our website so that you've got access to all of this information, or an affidavit, or how you'd write a letter, or what you'd keep in a book behind your microwave, or whatever it may be. But if you can give us standard information, and we will support it by some sort of documentation.
All right, thank you for that question. Let me see. If I have to try and standardize it, I would say will, and we make it a taboo. A will these days, they are free when you attend or go to a lot of financial institution. But let's suppose it's a language that you cannot understand. You can even write it down your own will. To say on this day and time, I'm LAT, want certain things to happen when I passed on. And one of the things that you can also include in that will is what needs to happen with your money. What needs to happen so that there isn't this hiccups, if I can call it, that you have to go over. So that's one of the things that you can do. For people that might be a bit learned, I would highly suggest get a will. It makes it easy for everybody involved. Otherwise, you'll have an uncle that's pulling on the one side, they have an aunt, and then, it takes forever. That's the reason why sometimes you find that the process to issue letter of authority takes longer. Yes, I spoke about the will. I think in some instances, we might need to, unfortunately, involve the legal practitioners, only to expedite the processes. But then again, it might be costly. Rare cases where, now we are desperate, that's where we have to, unfortunately, have an affidavit to say, these are the people. Only then, maybe we might get some sort of an assistance. But I have to be honest, it's not an easy process. It is not an easy process.
I think, MEC, then it follows through to what you were saying, that let's then have the documents and we put them on the website and we put them on the channel so that people have, because for instance, when Mo says, make a will, even if it is just at home, I have to think about the validity of it. Do I have to go to the police station, have it signed, have it stamped to make it valid? Those kind of things. And I think this would then go through into the next segment where we will speak about wills and have an understanding of how to draw up one and all of that. Ipatlele, are you well?
I'm good.
Fantastic. We're talking about child-headed households with the understanding that we have a lot of them across the country. Now let's speak about a 15-year-old who is the one that is heading the household, and they get their social grant money, and they would like to start a savings account. Can a child come to the bank and say, I would like to open a bank account, I'd like to start saving money? And when they need that money, that is within savings, would it be available for them?
Thank you very much, Lorato at MC. I think it's a brilliant question. I would love to allude to what Standard Bank, highlighted. As the custodians of, funds,
yes,
we need to make sure that we are transparent and we deal with certain things in a more, transparent way by making sure that we protect those that needs to, access funds on behalf of, others. It's not an easy process, but yes, they can be able to open an account.
Okay.
Provided that certain requirements are met. As per by the South African law, we know that should something happen to me, and if I'm a minor, someone else needs to look after that, and those processes they needs to be followed, because a minor cannot make an informed decision by themselves,
Right.
which means someone else might be able to take advantage of.
A guardian in this case.
Yes, or anyone else.
All right.
We're gonna need, certain processes to be followed in terms of, if a child is between this age and this age, we need a formal letter, that, informs us that this is a legal guardian. To Standard Banks' question, your formal processes of, High Court, getting letter of authorities and all of those things. And, and to that extent, if I may extend it just a little bit, who is this child, an abridged, certificate, birth certificate, and all of those things. But yes, they can be able to, open an account and be able to operate that account, provided that there's a parent or legal guardian that can be able to assist them. As custodians of, those funds, our best interest is to make sure that the funds, to MEC's point, they lost to their parents. Now everyone wants to be able to get access to those funds, but we need to make sure as a bank that those funds are channeled correctly to those children by following and making sure that we protect those funds that are meant for the children.
So let's, just before you come in, MEC, so let's deal with the age first. I think it's important. You've mentioned the age twice. So let's deal with the age. At what age can I come in and open my own account without a guardian?
Okay, I'm just going to quickly make an example. Any youth that is between 16 and 20, an original, birth certificate, and a green barcoded ID, and a proof of residence, we need to identify where is this person
Staying, okay.
and we can be able to do that. And if you look at the minors, that is below the age of 16, we're going to need to, an original abridged birth certificate, a parent or,
A guardian?
guardian.
All right.
Needs to be, physically present,
Yes.
with a barcoded ID as well, so that we can be able to identify those. And if you look at, child raised by parents, guardians,
All right.
we need that proof of legal guardianship.
Okay.
I cannot wake up tomorrow and say I'm the legal person of this, but we need to prove it with that legal document. That is stated, obviously. And if they are staying in rural, tribal areas,
Right.
we need, the
Tribal
tribal
authority
information
letters.
that they are staying there.
Okay.
Actually, so that we can be able to prove that should there be anything. I think that should be all.
Okay. MEC, you wanted to come in?
Yes. I want to say that in the case, and why I mentioned the age of 15 was just to create that conversation.
Yes.
Because you are a minor at 15. But the Department of Social Development has got social services that assist with the legalities of a child-headed household.
Right.
So they either appoint state guardians if there is no family member, or they deal with the process of handling how a guardian has to be appointed. So just for the viewers out there, is that should you be in a circumstance of the terrible example that I've provided, there is a department called Social Development that will help you, and various NGOs that can help you structure this correctly so that you don't have to be left by yourself, fending for yourself and not understanding your legal rights as a child-headed household individual, and how to then either have a state guardian appointed or a guardian within the family appointed.
And I think bringing in the element of social development, MEC, brings in a very critical aspect also to child-headed households, which would be social workers.
Right.
Who are within communities and would assist us with some of this paperwork that is needed, that has to go
Correct.
back and forth, and just confirmations, because they would know how to go about it.
Absolutely.
So that is a major consideration that our people must make in terms of linking with your local social worker just to make sure that what you are collating or the information that you're trying to put together
Yes.
is correct, and we are then able to provide the financial institutions with it.
Correct.
Thing. Mo, let's come back to, we've spoken about, MEC calls it this dreaded example that she just made, but let's speak about when the funds are needed for educational purposes. We've been saving. We now have an 18-year-old who has to head to university. Let's speak to that, the access and the legalities of it.
Yeah, I would say we still follow the same processes.
Okay.
And currently, I'm not aware of any obligation that we have from the banking side where we need to have certain things, being provided. The only thing I would think, just to give a comfort to say, in actual fact, I'm taking this 40,000 or 60,000 towards my education, maybe to have an invoice of some sort from that particular institution, just to show that, look, I'm ready to be registered. But as long as you have access to the funds, unfortunately, there's no obligation on our side to actually confirm that 60,000 is actually going to the university.
Okay. So what you're basically saying is that you would still want the same paperwork from me.
Yes.
How after I access the money, whether it is for educational purposes or not, it's neither here nor there for you.
You can never be too certain. You can never be too sure.
I hear you. Okay. Charmaine, are you well?
Lorato, I'm great. How
Are you good?
Very good.
Let's talk about the golden rule to saving.
Oh,
I want us to deal with that because our people, though we know about the concept of saving, but we do not know the fundamentals of saving.
yeah.
So let's deal with that. The
All right.
golden rules to
The
saving.
golden rule, Lorato. Saving shouldn't be an afterthought.
Okay.
We need to demystify the notion that saving is only for the wealthy.
Yes.
We need to change.
And
that.
that's what MEC has been trying to say, that
Yes.
anybody can save.
Anybody can save. For instance, if I may bring it in, I'm a 5 Rand coin saver. When I see a 5 Rand, I get excited. My eyes light up. And when I see them, get
You stay.
my
Yes.
container, I get excited and I get motivated. So saving is for anybody. It shouldn't be an afterthought. So what needs to happen is immediately when you're drawing up your budget,
Right.
make provision for your saving before you even start paying off some of your expenses. Very, very important. Because what COVID has taught us is that, life is inevitable. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So
Right.
we need to be sufficiently prepared. And how do we build that resilience? Through ensuring that we have made provision for the unforeseen that could potentially happen.
Right.
So the golden rule is to basically ensure that you make provision for your saving, ensure that you leverage off your compounded interest, because that will take you a long way. That will ensure that you accelerate your goals in terms of your finances.
Right.
And what it also does is when you start thinking about, the saving component and aligning it to your financial goals, you then need to start thinking about the right saving product that will complement your saving goals.
Oh. Okay. Well, on that 5 Rand note, let's take a short break. When we come back, we are going to speak a little bit more on saving and just make sure that MEC wants us to talk about the long-term and the short-term saving mechanisms and see how those can work for family setups. So join us as we continue this conversation.
Good day, everybody. My name is Benny Mvala, and I'm from Standard Bank, and I'm so excited that we are part of this awesome program that the MEC Treasury is running in the province. Today we were talking about savings, and I must say it is very important that in our families, as individuals, as families, as communities, that we start building a savings culture. Because remember, whatever that you're not going to save for, you're going to have to find an alternative way to finance it. So let's start building that savings culture. Let's start saving if you're going on vacation. Start saving for when you need to go fix that pothole damage on your car. For whatever the reason is, let's have a goal and build a savings culture that our children can have something that they can work on. Thank you.
Good day, my name is Sahamiti Tai. I'm the accounts manager from Vodacom, looking after public sector. And you might wonder why Vodacom. People know us as just a cell phone and a SIM card, data and airtime, but we are actually more than that. So as Vodacom, we've positioned ourselves very well. We've moved from the normal mainstream that people have known us, and we're calling ourselves as telco. And then within that, we have financial services as Vodacom that we can actually provide to our citizens here in Free State. So we commit ourselves to the Department of Provincial Treasury here in Free State to bring up those solutions that we can teach our citizens across the Free State province. So thank you.
We are having a wholesome conversation this Saturday morning. I love it. I'm joined by an all-woman panel. We're speaking about our babies and how to give them tuck money so that they learn how to save. Now, MEC, we've just had a very solid conversation about how to segment your wants, your needs, and your savings. But I want us to practically, again, we've said we want to make this as practical as possible, to speak about our salaries, our earnings, and sometimes we think we're not saving from the salary that I'm receiving it sounds, when you're saving, it sounds like I have to save from a different pocket altogether and forget that this is the money that I have, So I want us to just talk about that a little bit before we get into the last segment, which speaks to SMMEs.
No, thank you. And what I often hear, not only for workers in private sector, but also public sector, people say, hey, the 20th, it's payout day. Or the 15th, it's payout day.
Yes.
The money comes in and it just goes out. So what we want to do, Loretta, and I think with the partners, we've got sufficient information and sufficient guidance and professional support to help our society and our communities to say, okay, let us practicalize this. If I earn under between 0 to 10,000 rand,
yes,
these are the type of products and services I could be utilizing that's going to be the best for my needs,
yes,
and my desires in terms of savings products.
Right.
And we'll do the same when it comes to investments. We'll do the same when it comes to income. When it comes to deriving wealth, we will do the same.
Yes.
But for now, what I'd like us all to do is, as we close the segment today, on the various platforms that we have, the various social media platforms, a link for every specific solution,
right,
but segmented to different LMEs, segmented to different income earners,
right,
segmented. So as we're going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurs and SMMEs and bringing in the business aspect, there is still a shareholder or a director or a CEO that has to have a private part of savings, but then there'll also be this business part of savings. So we need to be able to differentiate, because they are not just under the same umbrella.
I hear you.
And I'd like us to consider and work on that, and I'm sure my team and these stakeholders that are with us today will provide us with the relevant information.
And obviously they are, all of our stakeholders are in finance, but I think what we would appreciate also, MEC, and you can come in here, is them also using their social media platforms for that kind of information, you know, as we continue this conversation, that they would be able to extend our footprint from a government. Because when I say our, I mean you actually, but yes, it's me too. It's ours. We're a team. So it would be beautiful to have them extend that footprint to speak about and put those products up on their different platforms, so that if somebody misses it from our social media platforms, they're able to go to Winnie's website and social media platforms and they would find it. If not, Lebo has that information. So it is synchronized for all of the partners so that we are able to extend our footprint in our communication.
We want to call it a movement, a financial
Yes.
literacy movement, and that's what we're developing here.
I love it. MEC, you touched, and I'd like to bring this last segment. You touched on SMMEs and the significance of entrepreneurs and their savings, and I love how you already, you know, separated them, that behind the organization that saves is the board member or a shareholder who also has to save individually. But I think there is a major need for our SMMEs to save. Shemaine earlier said COVID has taught us that we can never be prepared enough. Coming in from a government's perspective, why is it so important for you to have entrepreneurs that have a saving mentality?
Oh, my goodness. I think let's start with inflation as an example.
Right.
The entrepreneurs, largely their contribution to GDP would be, through the finished goods, products or services. That's how we calculate and analyze that term called gross domestic product,
Right.
GDP. So goods and services by itself, through tax, through regulation, through various other forms and means, is so volatile in this current economic environment that we're finding it being very, very difficult to be able to have a fixed cash flow system over a period. And in fact, the planning for businesses is a little bit more different than a personal planning environment. And that is why I feel that this should be a separate segment on its own.
Right.
And we've invited the MEC of Economic, Small Business Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs to host a similar type of conversation or financial program for business people. And I believe so it should be separate. We cannot bring it into this conversation because it is so big. We are not going to touch the detail and the information that's really going to serve our purpose and our objective of this, because you really want somebody to sit with a pen and a paper and learn from it and be able to say, okay, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it. So in the enterprise or propriety space, there is rural enterprises, informal enterprises, there are companies, there are trusts. That's just the structure and makeup of how the entity is constituted. And then there are various forms of different mechanisms of financial advice that you want to give, not only to that, but also turnover brands, because then you are EMEs, QSEs, commercial, this, that. Then there's the financial sector charter regulations that talks about charter requirements and skills development and taxation and other things. And then there's trust and business trust and components under a business trust and a family trust, and it's a lot. It's a network. And how do you deal with property? How do you deal with commercial property, commercial financing, and. So it really requires a much bigger, broader conversation. In fact, we should have one Saturday just dealing with the personal financial literacy, and the next Saturday dealing with business financial literacy. So that is the topic that I want to introduce to the MEC, and then perhaps bring in a similar type of team while we're working together in this partnership, extend it to that level as well, which is critically important. It is absolutely dire. We want to build a nation that is an entrepreneurial, industrialized, producing nation. We want to change the face of our South African economy, not only to a consuming economy, but also a producing economy. And we want to be a player in the trade environment across the African continental free trade area, but also across the globe. So there is a lot for us to do in that space. And as we may touch on it today, we're not going to do it justice, I can assure you.
Yes.
So if we're going to talk about that business, how do we take the business, its retention of income, how do we deal it through shares maybe, and then bring it into the personal capacity, and how does that person grow wealth out of their hard work of their companies? And do they do it through the company in bringing in wealth, or do they do it in their personal individual capacity? And that's the conversation that we have. If I'm a business owner, and I'm a sole proprietor, as an example, how do I separate what the company's savings goals should be versus the individual sole proprietor savings goals? And we need to extend that conversation outside of trying to bring a financial literacy conversation in SMMEs. That's my suggestion to the team today.
Okay. You know, we had, MEC, you are aware, we had the Industrial Entrepreneur Week last week.
Yes, yes.
And we had Nicolette Mashile, who is known on digital platforms as the financial bunny.
Yes.
And she asked, and I'm tying this with this conversation that we're having on SMMEs, she asked, which would have seemed like a small question, but we had SMMEs that could not respond. And I think it shows the significance of what you're saying. She asked, what is the lending rate in South Africa currently? And she said a very important thing. She said, you can't borrow when you do not know what the financial institution is going to ask back from you. And I think it's a very important, it's a significant question, because we, SMMEs want the money, but we should then be thoughtful of what wanting the money means, because we have to take it back to the financial institution that is willing to give it to me. So I think it, as you say, it is a very important component for us to have outside of what we are currently doing and just talking about personal finances. But talking about that, Winnie, what is the significance of having SMMEs save?
Very, very significant, especially, let me practicalize it.
Yes.
Let's say I run a business and every month I turn over 20,000. You know, that means that I make 20,000 every month.
Right.
And out of that 20,000, based on the practicality that MEC has shown us, you would want to save around 20%. Okay, I'm going to make this maybe, 10,000? Or yeah, let me make it 50%. I'm going into savings, and I'm taking 10,000 every month and I'm saving it. I'm saving. It's just an example. You can go as your need, as you can afford to save. This is now you, the business owner, saving on behalf of the business with the business account. You save 10,000 a month. That is what, 60,000 after 12 months, right? How much is it?
120. 120.
Maths. 120,000.
Mathematics.
Yeah, 120,000 per annum. That 120,000, it's now given me an ability or an enablement to then invest. I can either invest back into the infrastructure of the business, or I can decide to say, okay, I'm going to invest into an investment account, such as a unit trust, on behalf of a personal, not a personal entity, a business entity in this. It can be a unit trust, it can be whatsoever. So that is why it's important for the SMMEs to save, because savings becomes an enabler for you to invest. And the more your business invests, then the business expands. And when your small business expands, it means that now it can hire more people. And when your business is enabled to hire more people, that's more people with a job in the Free State, in your local economy. Therefore, money changes hands. More people can afford goods to go and buy into other businesses as well. Then they grow as well, which speaks to the GDP that MEC was talking about. So it's really important for us as business owners to have that savings culture, because if you can do it in your personal capacity, it will definitely overflow into your business because you can then do it easily there.
Just extending that question, Shemaine, we have MEC has touched on in the past couple of weeks the stokvels, and just the ability for them to save, and the money that circulates, just in that front. Can I save money for business purposes using a stokvel?
Absolutely. Well, there's nothing stopping you there. And to elaborate on my colleague there in terms of using the same model, to expand on your business, to ensure that you invest in your business is very pertinent because, history has taught us that stokvels have been used to fund consumables, household consumables,
Yes.
groceries. Now we now need to start thinking about how do we now think investment, how
Right.
do we think long term, how do we think wealth creation, specifically around your business. So this is a great vehicle and a driver that will enable small businesses to achieve their financial goals and to even expand on their businesses, because you can reinvest, as she said, back into your business. You can, go into a new business venture that will enable you, to hire new workmanship. So it's very, very important to start thinking about stokvels in a way that will enable you to start investing and growing your own personal business.
It's beautiful. Lebo, before MEC wraps this conversation up, before my boss Fifi looks at me, just a quick question. I have a goal, a saving goal for the year. Help me reach it. 3-5 nuggets. Tell me what to do in order for me to reach it.
So I like that question because then you know exactly what to do.
Yes.
So you want to afford that piece of gammon at the end of,
Yes.
of the year. So how do you get there?
Yes.
And I'd like to go back to my previous point to say automate the savings. Make it part of the budget.
Right.
So it's automated. You know exactly how much you're going to
save.
To save.
Right.
And how much. So basically, you will know how much you need.
Right.
At the end of the year. That's the goal. And then you will know how much you need to save on a monthly basis. So after you've automated the savings, make sure that it's not in the same account as your working account, as a transactional account. So make sure that it's a savings account.
So I would take a different envelope.
Yes.
As MEC has shown us, to use a different envelope with a different writing on it.
Exactly.
Correct.
Because it can't be the same, as your normal. Just now you pay the rent money with, what's supposed to go into the savings.
Right.
So make sure that it's in a different account, and speak to your financial institution. Find out if you want to save for that particular reason, which accounts can you use? Because it has to be interest bearing as well. So make sure that you get the right account for the right goal, if I
Right.
can put it like that.
Right.
Are you going to put notice into that account? Do you need to put notice when you want the funds, or is it available immediately? So those things are also play
an
a role.
important role.
And just on MEC's points, now financial institutions have become very modern, where they guide you in terms of, all right, so this is your goal. So if, for example, when you're budgeting, this is how much you've spent on a certain aspect. They've put apps in place where you
Yes.
can actually budget, and you can actually go in and say, this is my savings goals, and once I've reached it, how do I get to the next, what is my next options? So play around in the systems where you're banking currently. Play around with their systems and find out what sort of tools can help you reach your saving goals.
Thanks, Lebo. MEC, we've had a wholesome conversation. Are you happy?
I am very happy. I think we just got to get to the practical part of it.
Yes.
And part of doing that, if I can just wrap up just one or two critical things that
You
I
may.
think we can take out of this is, we should start incentivizing savings from the household also into business environment or whichever. So incentivizing is that idea of, okay, you going to do a chore for mom and I will give you an additional extra A, B, C, D. Or we incentivize to say this is the holiday, so if we can save X amount, we'll go somewhere nice in South Africa. But if you can save more as a family, we go to a beautiful, expensive holiday abroad or whatever it may be. So that then really talks to providing a leverage for the family and for individuals to say, okay, that is a goal, that's something I'm dreaming of, this is a vision, this is
forward to.
And it's important to realize that from a very young age, to say, I can work towards a vision, I can work towards a goal, and it then integrates into your work ethic, it then integrates into the organizational ethic, it then integrates into a South African community ethic, because if a community works together, we can have a beautiful hall. If a community works together, we have this beautiful church or whatever it may be. That's the first thing that I'd like to take out. The second thing is that we got to segment what it is that we are doing, because it's not a blanket approach for everybody. And we've got to provide solutions to every single person out there listening and being attentive towards the work that we are doing around this room. So on the website, if you are following it, it's on a banner that's circulated across this entire segment. Go in there and go pull out information that is required. And then lastly, as we deal with that, talk to your financial services providers, talk to your bank, find solutions. And savings, you can earn from savings. So when you invest, and when we talk about closing up an investment for 6 months, a notice deposit or a fixed deposit or a money market, I'm talking short term, this is savings, we're going to talk investments, which will yield much bigger and greater results. In the short term, you can earn a little bit of funds towards putting money. The banks needs us to save, because it's that savings that helps them extend loans. So they do provide some sort of interest income for those who do save. And then lastly, for religious base, social base, I have to touch on this, the Sharia savings, because we don't, as Muslim people, we don't believe in interest. So we do profit sharing savings type of system called Sharia banking. And there are alternatives and support towards that type of initiatives. And then there's also in banks a stokvel or social club type of accounts that talks to the nature in which our rural areas and individuals dealing with stokvels. The banks have tapped into that, financial services have tapped into it, although it scares me that 45 billion rands is still not in banks in the stokvel environment. It scares us, because then our figures and our data is not aligned in terms of the financial and planning and budgeting decisions we're making as government, our monetary policy, fiscal policy, and that relation towards budgeting and supporting our society, if we're not having that information. So stokvels are also there through banks. So talk to your various financial service providers, and there's endless private, such as Winnie and others, private financial or FSPs that is able to also provide you with detailed advice that works hand in hand with your commercial banking infrastructure. So talk to them and people that you trust. I think that ultimately, but do not be afraid to have a discussion about money. Do not, money is not a taboo conversation. It is an essential conversation for the home, and that's how I'd like to end that. Thank you.
MEC, on that note, I was talking to you about the Industrial Entrepreneur Week, and we had a young woman who was speaking to us about global trends in tourism, who looks at township tourism and some of the service providers in the township. And I'm tying this with the conversation, and I think it's a very important conversation to say, when Statistics South Africa comes, it says I am unemployed because I am not accounting for all of my rents and cents. And Bali said she had a client who was in the township who had been accounted for as unemployed, who was running 10 salons in the location and made at least 150,000 every month. That is money unaccounted for. And it goes back to what you're saying, that we still have money in the townships that is unaccounted for, that we should look into, because that would then assist our financial institutions to quantify what we actually have.
Absolutely. Loretta, and this is the work that we try and instill within our local authorities, our local municipalities, as well as within our sister departments. Permitting and enforcement in the local economic development areas, we do not have that enforcement within our municipalities. And my call to mayors, MMs, and those who are leading LED units, door to door, as you complete your door to door, ward to ward, understand which are formal businesses, which are informal businesses, understand the turnover. It just requires a permit structure, and then you have that permit structure placed on the system in your municipality, and that then will help us with that data. And that data then will translate into ensuring that those are the same people that have access to grants in government, access to financial institutions, access to all of these wonderful support and available programs that national, provincial and local governments have, that our own people don't have access to because they're afraid to formalize their businesses for tax purposes.
Correct.
And also from a foreign perspective, because I've been doing door to door, there are foreigners that are doing business, but they don't have the necessary paperwork.
Right.
If we don't have the paperwork, you are definitely not going to be pushed to have a permit to do business. And that then becomes a ripple effect in terms of how we manage that within our local economic sphere. So I think all in all, we've got a lot of work to do.
We do.
And these are little checkpoints that we must identify and be able to place it in that action plan that we have as a government towards working to that national development goal of 2030. And together, both private sector and public sector at all spheres of government, we must hold hands and help each other in ensuring that we have a better South Africa for all. Beautiful.
On that very note, MEC, thank you so much. Let me thank all our partners, our stakeholders always show up for us. Thank you so much for being here, Lebo. Thank you, Winnie, Shemaine. We are really grateful for this. This has been a very wholesome conversation. I think as a person, I'm getting better and better. By the time we're done, MEC, I'll be teaching them how to save. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do follow us on all of our social media platforms. Let's have this conversation. Let's continue asking the questions. The team will respond to you. And yes, we will put up all of those legalities that Mo was talking about earlier. Thank you very much for joining us. Ke Morwadia Khomolemo, and I will be back again on a Saturday morning to help you count your rands and cents.